Hi everyone, Helen Blunden here. I hope you're happy, healthy and well. It is time for a new book review and this was a delight to read, and I didn't read it in the one sitting. I read it in a whole day and in a little bit the morning after, and I've just finished it. It is Christine Bernard's and it is called Mute, and I saw this in the library and I must admit there was something about the cover that I thought, I have to read this. It's something that I've often thought of myself as going for a period of time of not speaking to anyone, not interacting with anyone, not communicating with anyone. Like the character in this book, I also wanted to be mute for a period of time. It also struck me very weirdly because it was a very simple book and it could have been like a first print run or something like that, because it's just a blurb on the back with one quote, and that's about it. So I found the cover intriguing, I found the premise intriguing, and it is about a young magazine article writer. Her name is Rebecca. She's in her mid-30s. Her life isn't going so well. So there's things just aren't falling into place for her. She's a little bit pissed off and she has her ups and her down days, and she doesn't know what's going on. And so her boss Bubbles, who she calls Bubbles because of her bubbly personality, takes her aside, and Bubbles says to her, you know, Rebecca, we've realized something's not quite right. What's going on? And so I guess she was confronted by her own behaviors from her boss. And that's when they both kind of hatch up this plan to get Rebecca to have some time out. But rather than taking leave, Rebecca decides to go mute for 9 months, to not really interact, communicate with anyone for 9 months, except for her boss. And in the meantime, it gives her time to work from home. It gives her time to write on a novel, to also reflect and write about her journey being mute for the magazine to make as a feature article. And so this is what happens. Rebecca goes on this 9 month journey of not talking to anyone and somehow navigating through life, going shopping, going to a cafe and not speaking, which is a really interesting premise, because when I said to my husband what this book was about, first question he asked was, is she married? And I took this question to be that, he really wanted to do this, as did I, would love to go mute for a while. But when some people have relationships in their lives or families, you can't go mute, but there are ways to be able to be mute or go mute for a little period of time and to seek some solace or solitude in your day to get a bit back of yourself. So the whole premise of this book is kind of like finding yourself in a very noisy world when you have so many expectations, and also others have expectations of you. How do you find your little peace and quiet in the world? And Rebecca found it by going mute. So some of the life lessons that I got out of this one, there are 4 themes that I got out of this book. The very first one, obviously, is finding a bit of solace, finding a bit of peace in a very noisy world where we have so many expectations put on us. I also likened this book, the muteness concept, to something that I had gone through in lockdown. And I think we all had something like this in lockdown. I live in Melbourne, so Melbourne had one of the worst or longest lockdowns in the whole of the world. We had 263 days in total. That was a long time to be in lockdown, where a lot of us actually started thinking about our lives, started thinking about our work, what is important for us personally, what is important for our family. For me, a lot of the stuff that Rebecca had gone through, especially with her observations of other people and their reaction to her not talking, was really interesting, because I found the very similar reactions to my colleagues when during lockdown. They weren't in lockdown, but all of Melbourne was, because they were working and living interstate. They didn't have the same strictness of lockdown. So there was a feeling of they don't understand what we in Victoria, what we in Melbourne are actually going through. So there was times of, not I would say this tension, it was kind of like the tension was reflected back on me, where you started to self-reflect on what your own perceptions of how others see you or see your position. And you started to realize that in Australia, we were all going through different experiences of the lockdown. And Melbourne and Victorians in particular would have a completely different view of what was happening in other states. So this period of muteness that Rebecca went through, I likened it to the experiences that I was also going through lockdown, and understanding that people out there didn't really understand what you were going through or why you were going through what you were going through. And so they created some kind of tension that you had to either try and seek more solace or go inside yourself to really understand, hey, they don't understand what you're going through. So at times I felt I had to be a little bit more compassionate to people who didn't understand what we were going through. So that was the first couple of lessons that I learnt from this book. The other lesson I learnt is that Rebecca was going through this period where she started to reassess who she wanted more of in her life and who she didn't. She kind of understood the intentions of where people were at, whether those intentions were good or bad. And so she reflected on her childhood and about the hate that she had with her father, and about the love that she had with her mother, and also the love that she had for her colleagues, that she started to think, hey, they're not so bad. You know, the work that she where she works wasn't so bad. So she started to reflect more about herself, and how creating that solitude in her life really made her think long and hard about how she reacted to things, but also how, again, compassionate she could be with others. There was a very strong period of self-reflection for her. And in this self-reflection, there was a big lesson in her self-awareness. Why you are the way you are, you know, why the past was the past, and what she could do in the future to change it. A big part of that was also getting a pet, and she got a cat, and the cat himself really taught a lot about Rebecca. She saw herself in her cat as well, which was really interesting because, again, during lockdown, I had my darling little Pud, who you see down here, who was so instrumental in my health and well-being and sanity during lockdown. So having another pet to talk to and to kind of learn from was really interesting, that I also got out of this book. The last one was this concept of cyclothymia, which I had never heard about. It is a condition which I looked up. It's a mood disorder where you have highs and lows, but not to the extremes of bipolar disorder. And this also got me thinking about why she also got into this this disorder, and why she read and was obsessive about it, and simply because she connected with something in her life at that time that she thought, hey, maybe that she has this. For me, I thought about this myself, because not that I have that mood disorder, but the fact that I had gone on these kind of journeys and these in-depth rabbit warren journeys in discovering all sorts of things during lockdown, I guess it was very similar to the journey I had been on. So for me, I loved Mute. I read it not in the one sitting, just in a little bit over a sitting, because I fell asleep. I spent an entire day reading this. And I loved it simply because of the premise of the fact that we all need a bit of solitude in our life. Now, we might not be able to kind of isolate ourselves from people, because we realize we cannot isolate. Humans are social creatures, but we can actually find solitude in our lives, even for a little bit of time, just so that we can find ourselves and find what is truly important to us. So I highly recommend this book by Christine Bernard. She does have a sequel to this book called Haze. I'm going to look up her books and see what else I could read. Similarly, because it's in a very easy readable book, and they are the 4 life lessons that I got out of this one that were extremely connected to the experiences that I had gone through lockdown and my experiences of finally deciding to remove myself off social media completely and get back a little bit of myself like Rebecca did in this book. All right then, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.